I'm Megan Armstrong, and this is the 6 Feet Above podcast. 6 Feet Above was created when I started to share my story of spending 16 years wanting to be 6 feet under to now living a life full and happy 6 feet above. The more I started to talk about it, my struggles, my past, the more I realized that people were genuinely interested and not judgmental at all, which is what I feared for so long. And in fact, other people wanted to talk about their story as well, and for some reason trusted me to do so. So the 6 Feet Above podcast is my way of helping to share other people's stories, finding out what works for them to create a life of happiness. Before we begin this episode, I want to say that if I use the wrong terminology, misgender anyone, or say anything that may offend, I apologize. I'm learning about these topics each week as I sit down with guests, and it's never my intention to offend or belittle, only to enlighten and discuss. This is Kinsey's story. So I am honored to be sitting down with someone I've known my entire time in Atlanta. Her name's Kinsey Trzcinski. Again, another person I know from the fitness community.
I was thinking about it. It's been since 2014 or 15.
It's, I think, earlier than that, 2013, because that's when I moved here. And that's when I started working at Flywheel. And you were our little runner front desk girl.
Oh, yeah.
And
rough start.
Yeah, it was an interesting start at that. But it's just funny that all of these experiences I've had, even though they're no longer in my present, I'm not working at that studio anymore. I'm not working at the studio that you're currently working at, that I brought you to. I am so grateful for all of them because they brought all of these people into my life.
Right.
And if for nothing more, it created all of these relationships that are going to last longer than any job.
Right.
So thank you for trusting me to come and be here and sit down. And we're going to go way back eventually, but I want to start by saying earlier this year, Kinsey kind of opened up to me about something that you hadn't told anyone. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was because I was opening up on my side with some things that I had gone through and you just trusted me, or I guess I want to get a feel from you, like, why did you tell me of all people? And you'll know once we get to this place in the episode, you'll know.
I was thinking about that too, because when we sat down, like why we sat down was completely the topic was just like, it just got onto it. And I don't know, like we were sitting down, we were talking. I feel like a lot of times this overwhelming feeling of like, I have to get it out. Like I have to tell someone, I don't know what else to do. Cause I get back into the whole, like, I've been holding this in. I feel like it's just going to erupt at some point, you know? And so I think like we were just on the topic of opening up and I was like, here's what's going on. Like, I just felt like, I mean, you're obviously someone I look up to and someone that I'm like, someone that I'm like, you know, I trust you and I want to, you know, open up. And I think while we were on the topic of it, I was just like, well, here's what's going on. Like,
wow.
It's all out there.
I appreciate you opening up and we will get to that. But first, let's introduce you. So Kinsey is a sculpt house instructor and pepper boxing coach, instructor, trainer,
coach,
personal trainer now.
Sure.
Speaking of, did you take your NASM yet?
Studying.
Okay.
I want to make sure, you know, I know everything.
You passed the first
well.
time. Yeah. But Kinsey is newer to the fitness industry. I'd say you were working at Flywheel, but you were doing more of the front desk and those types of duties. But as far as actual teaching and training and coaching, that's only been through the past 18 months. Mm-hmm. So I was working at the studio where Kinsey's at currently, and she was taking my classes a bunch, and I just had known her obviously for years before. And I always look for people that A, like the workout, and B, are good at it and kind of pick up things quickly. And I knew that you were going through kind of a rough time in your life. And it's literally just, you know, if you don't ask, you won't receive. And I asked her, hey, would you ever be interested in teaching here? And it was like, yes, game on from there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of basically your start in fitness.
Yeah, definitely. And that was my first job in like probably 2.5 years. My first job, like out of retirement, coming back out of it.
So let's get into that. What were you doing for those 2.5 years?
So I was my mom's primary caretaker for a very long time. I took care of her full time. She had cancer. She eventually ended up dying of cancer. And after like all this happened, I was like, I got to get into something. I want to, do something that I love, do something that I'm going to enjoy doing. I don't just want to jump into a job because I have to, because I need to make money. And I was lucky enough to be in a situation where I was able to kind of ease into it. And I remember thinking, if I were going to teach somewhere, like this is what I want to do, I would I would make like fake playlists like for my first class,
which PS I know she has the most bomb playlists.
I spend a lot of time on it. It's been like my iTunes library is like 10 years in the making.
You always got a 5 on that 1 to 5 scale in our reviews.
You did give me a 6 one time.
Did I?
Plus.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Extra credit.
Yeah, extra credit on that. But I always wanted to. I knew it was something I wanted to do. I could see myself doing it. And I remember when the day that you were holding auditions, I was like day 5 of the flu.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I almost bailed. And I remember texting you and I was like, hey, I'm getting over the flu. Like, I don't know. And I was nervous too. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Of course. And you put me second after Elaine.
Who had been teaching forever.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to wing it and just, I don't know. Like, we'll see. And I like prepared for it, like I figured out. But yeah, and I remember texting you and I was like, I'm getting over the flu. Like, I don't know if this is, and you were like, well, this is the only day we're going to have it. So I was like, fuck, all right, well, here I come.
I was like, you got this, Kinsey.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my tough love nature.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in you so
much. And I
much.
needed that.
Yeah.
I did need that for sure.
I'm like, I believe in you. Just get your butt here.
Yeah.
So I feel like when you talk about, I was my mom's primary caregiver for 2 years, it's very like, and I don't say this in a rude or mean way, it's very like nonchalant. It's just like, that was part of my life.
Yeah.
But that was a big part of your life.
Right.
And your mom was a big part of you growing up and some of the things that she went through growing up. And she struggled with alcoholism and was diagnosed with breast cancer years ago, right?
Yeah.
So just give us a little background about your mom and how...
Yeah. I mean, my childhood was fine growing up. Like, it wasn't so bad. It was pretty normal, general. Not bad, like it wasn't bad growing up until like things started. My brother and I got older. My parents got a little older. I remember my mom started having issues with her alcohol. I remember when I was like 12 years old, we got a call and they left a voice message and they're like, we now have her incarcerated in our facilities. We pulled her over for DUI. And I was like, whoa.
At 12 years old? Do
you
even know what that means at 12?
No, I just remember I was like, oh my God, my mom's in jail. Like, what am I going to do? How are we going to get her out? And like, I think my parents were separated at the time and that was all happening. And like up until high school, I moved out. I was living with my dad at the time in high school because my mom's alcohol situation was so bad. Like we couldn't, my brother lived with her. I had to move out. I had to get out. It was a very like hostile situation because she, was struggling herself.
Yeah.
And I lived with my dad, and then my relationship with my dad kind of went south. And I moved out my senior year of high school and I rented my friend's mom's like a room in her house for $100 a month just because I was like, I have to remove myself from this situation.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, I know. And I was like thinking about it. I'm like, okay, let me kind of go back and dig into, oh yeah, that happened. I lived with my boyfriend at the time for a little bit, and this is still like senior year of high school. Lived with my boyfriend at the time for a little bit, and then eventually my mom like finally got sentenced. And this was like years later, and she ended up losing her license, didn't have a car. I moved in with her. She was living in a hotel at the time.
Jeez.
And we lived in a hotel together. And then eventually we like got an apartment.
She was like 19 or 20 at that point?
Yeah, like still going. Like I took a year off of high school, or right after high school.
Okay.
And then I ended up like going to college.
You went to Kennesaw, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's just kind of interesting growing up too, because a lot of people think that I'll turn out like my mom, or, that was always kind of, people were letting that float around me. Like, well, you're going to have money issues like your mom did. And, you don't drink too much. You're going to end up an alcoholic like your mom was. And that was always kind of like in the back of my head, like, oh no, like what if I turn out like that? Like it could have been so much worse.
Right.
But eventually, I ended up going to school. Mom's thing ended up kind of like settling down a little bit. I was still, when we lived together in an apartment, I was still taking care of her. Like, she didn't have a car. So I was driving her everywhere, driving her to work.
Did she get sober?
She was in and out of AA because it was court ordered, but I don't think she was ever fully sober, because I don't think in her mind, and there were so many great qualities about her which I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But there were so many qualities about her that are like, you would think is metastatic.
And this is huge because I mean, you gave me a 101 in this about a year ago, and like, I had no idea. It's, you know, we hear in society like, oh, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you're like, well, that's great that we're all aware it's happening, but like, let's actually talk about what happens after that. So for me, it was
where it's like, all right, I've been through this, you know, I've, you know, been taking care of my mom who's been through it. And I kind of got to a point where I have a platform and I have a voice and I have people that listen to me, and maybe I've had so many people tell me, you know, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know that. And I don't fault anyone for it. I mean, you don't know until you until you're in it. Yeah, until you're in it.
It's just like depression. I'm like, it's really hard to understand what someone's going through unless you've been there.
Exactly.
So, you know, watching your mom go through that, I'm not even going to ask you, like, how was that experience? It's like, well, one could guess.
Yeah.
But what did you do to keep going? What did you do to keep moving?
I think with me, and I don't know when it started coming on or when, like, I felt this kind of need to take care of people. Like, I kind of accepted, like, I'm a caretaker. I take care of other people. I'm the person where, like, hey, I'm strong enough to do this, or I'm strong enough to get through it. I can help people through it. I'm just like naturally have that caretaking mindset, I guess. I don't know.
Kind of thrown into it at a young age.
Exactly. And I've just kind of accepted it, like, all right, here's where we're at. Because in my situation, there was no one else.
Right.
I was the only, I mean, I have a brother. My brother and my mom's relationship wasn't great because of her past with alcohol. They were not speaking, actually. And you know, the rest of my family doesn't live in the area, and kind of everything that my mom has been through, we've all tried to help her.
Right.
And she kind of like got to a point where it's like, all right, I can only help you as much as you're willing to help yourself. Type of situation. And I think for the longest time, she wanted to be like, no, I'm fine. Like, everything's great. Like, I've got money. I don't have a problem. When in reality, like, she was struggling for money. She had a problem with alcohol. You know, and then this, you know, the cancer came back, and it was kind of just like all right, now we're going to deal with everything. Now it kind of like, and we fluctuated between going back and forth. She lived with me for a little while. And then she wasn't quite in remission, but she wasn't getting treatment. And she was at a point where she was okay to drive. She was okay to, you know, take care of herself.
She could exist.
Yes. And then it kind of, it got to that point where it was like, all right, surgeries are now every other week. Chemo is every week. And, you know, helping her recover from that, she wasn't able to really take care of herself in a way that, you know, and I was the only one.
Right.
You know, it was just me. If I didn't do it, no one would. And in my mind, I'm like, I can't let this happen. Like, I can't let my mom suffer.
Yeah.
I can't let her, you know, take care of herself, because then I would have that guilt, you know, of, well, I had the opportunity to take care of her and I didn't. So,
but I feel like, and this is obviously an outsider looking in, I feel like once you got into it, it's like you felt like you had to at first, right? It was like your duty. But looking at all the stuff that you post, like, you made it such a beautiful experience, especially in the last couple of months of her life.
Yeah.
You're very creative. You're very artistic. For those that don't know, Kinsey is an amazing artist. And you started using that creativity, and it seemed like you were creating experiences for her that she actually could enjoy.
Yeah.
Rather than just taking care of her and like making sure she was still living. It was like, well, screw that. Like, let's actually enjoy what we have this day, because you're still alive and you're still here. So tell me a little bit about how you as an individual and what you're good at and what you love. How you created it for her to enjoy those last, you know, few months of experiences. And also, like, you can keep living like that through what you did, making those videos and doing all the stuff that you did for her.
Yeah. And when I shared it, it was just kind of like a look into, like, hey, here's what happens. There are really shitty parts. It was really bad, but
here are the beautiful things.
Yeah, it can still be, you know, people lose parents all the time. You know, it's not like I'm the only one,
right.
You know, and some people have a similar situation to me. Some people don't. And I think just sharing it in general, I remember going through all of this and I was like, I didn't have the support of someone who had been in my situation. Like I said, it was mostly just me. My brother was definitely there for support, but he wasn't like, he was like, oh my gosh, I'll do whatever you need, Kinsey, because I didn't, I mean, he walked in when my mom was in the hospital and like, it was like probably 7 days after that she died.
Jeez.
He walked in and he was like, I had no idea it was this bad. And he was like, whatever you need, whatever you want, I will take care of it. And it's kind of like you have to be thrown into it where it's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
But kind of just sharing my story and my mom had a lot of great qualities. As much as they were negative and as much as, you know, things were hard, I try and focus on what I can take from her.
Yeah.
And, you know, put that in my own life, you know, not the bad parts, not focus on that. Like you could dwell in the past and say, well, my mom was an alcoholic. My mom was in jail. You know, she had all these issues, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that was part of it. But for the most part, I always looked up to my mom no matter what. And when some people were like, oh, you know, we can't stand to be around, you know, we're done taking care of her and helping her because of this and this. It's like, well, she does have a lot of like positive things to bring to it. And she was always positive about what her diagnosis was. She never cried about it. And she never was like, oh, my life is over. You know, I have cancer, came back. She was always like, well, we're going to treat it. And it's going to, you know, I'm going to live.
Yeah.
And she was always really positive, you know, with her doctor, even if her doctor brought her bad news, like, hey, like, you know, your tumor markers have increased or, you know, we need to up your chemo. She'd be like, okay, well, we'll just treat it and it'll be fine. I mean, even she was always really positive and she always had a positive spin on everything. And even when I would come to her with my own complaints, like, I'm going through this, like, even though she's literally dying of cancer, she would focus on me and, you know, offer me support, offer me guidance. She always had like, I could always call her with anything and she would always give me the best, like exactly what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that I'm trying to take that and take that with me to other people and take that with me into my experiences instead of like, oh, my life is terrible. My mom was an alcoholic.
Right.
This is the shit that I went through. I'm going to suffer now and bring everyone down with me.
And I think that's a huge theme of my whole idea for the show is that we are really in control. We are so much more in control, and sometimes it's harder to acknowledge that and grasp that when you're in it. But hearing all these stories just proves that we're in control, and it doesn't mean that things weren't hard and you didn't go through a lot of shit, but it means that you chose to go down this path and not this path. You didn't play the victim. You're not playing the victim today. I mean, it's only 2 years ago. That's still pretty fresh. And during that same period of time that your mom was literally dying, the same month, I think you said, like, you were getting divorced.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like we're trying to say whose life was worse and who's, you know, it's like, no, this was just my story and this is what happened and this is how I got through it. And it's almost like you don't even know how you're going to deal with it until you're thrown into the situation. Right. And you said you figured it out and you were there for your mom. But I can't imagine how emotional knowing that a relationship was ending as your mother's life was also ending at the same time. And just how you got through that on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think like going up until like it got really bad, I kind of, and it taught me a lot about myself and it taught me a lot about the people that I bring into my life. And, you know, instead of thinking, and I guess I pull from how my mom thought, like she never thought like her life was over. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I was put in this situation to learn from it. Like I'm not, this isn't the end of my life, you know, just because all this is happening. But I forgot my train of thought.
I'm just asking, you know, really finding out like what people do on the day to day to keep mentally happy. So when you're the end of your relationship, coming to the end of your mother's life, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? Like, yes, you're staying strong, but like on the day to day, how do you handle that?
I think that I was just like tunnel vision. And I was like, this is like, I was born for this. Like, this is what, you know, I was put into right now. I have to deal with it. I'm going to get through it. I didn't have another choice. Like being strong was my only choice.
Was there a time after your mom died, you got divorced, that you just had that mental breakdown?
I think, like I said, tunnel vision, but I saw this huge light at the end of the tunnel that I was going through, where I was like, all right, I've been taking, and it sounds, when you say it out loud, it doesn't sound great, but I've been taking care of my mom through alcoholism, through her not having a license, not having a car, now having, cancer, watching her die. I felt like, oh my gosh, like she's in a better place. Yeah. She's no longer suffering. Right. She was like a victim, or she was her own prisoner, basically. Right. Because she had so many struggles, even though there's a lot of great things about her. She had so many struggles. She had so much going on. She was struggling with alcohol. She was struggling with money, with the cancer. And it's like, oh my God, she's free. Right. How great is that? Like, she's free from it. And I felt like this huge sigh of relief. Like, oh my, because I was always like on pins and needles, just like, what's going to happen next? Like, is she going to die right now? Is she going to die tomorrow? Am I going to come to pick her up for chemo and she's going to be laying in the bed dead? And that was something that I really feared. And I was like constantly on edge. Like, I would always text her, and if she didn't text me back within like 30 seconds, I'd call her and be like, she's like, oh, I'm blow drying my hair. Like, fuck. And you have to laugh at it. Like, we had to find humor in things. Like, I had shaved her head 3 times, and like, we laughed the entire time because it was just so fucking funny. Yeah. Like, with the razor, I don't know, the trimmer, whatever the fuck it's called. Like, it was just so funny. Like, it was me and her, and like there was no one else to be like, well, Sherry, you need to do this. Like, I tried to tell her, I'm like, hey, like, cancer feeds on sugar. Quit eating sugar. Yeah. Like, I meal prepped for her. I made all of her meals. I like made her healthy stuff. And I'd come over and she's got like a half gallon of ice cream in the freezer. So it's like, but what am I going to do? What am I going to tell someone? Hey, don't do that. Like, you also have to find that balance of like, hey, live your life.
I so look up to you in your sense of perspective, and your mom's perspective. It's like, most women that are basically forced to have to shave their head, or they're going to lose their hair anyways. It's like that's an identity thing for them. Yeah. So learning to look at things in perspective and realizing like you can either play the blame game and feel real sorry for yourself, or you can feel sorry for yourself for a second and then kind of dig yourself out and make the most of it. And I think that's with any situation in life.
And my mom never like felt sorry for herself, at least in front of me or in front of anyone else. She was always like, I'm doing great. I mean, I think her positivity is what kept her alive for 2.5 years. I mean, she had tumors that like were taking over her liver, and for whatever reason, like, they kept going down. Yeah, she was going through chemo, but there was a time where she wasn't even going through treatment and they were going down.
So what would you tell anyone out there right now that has someone close to them, whether it's a mother, father, daughter, whatever, that is watching someone they love go through this?
I think I would say see the good in it and see the positives in it. And I grew a lot closer to my mom during this time, even when she was going through chemo, and her and I would still get in fights. There was a time where I had to say, hey, you can't live with me anymore. You gotta find your own place. You gotta be on your own, kind of like, you gotta show tough love, but you also have to take care of yourself. And I think a big takeaway from all of this is I gotta take care of myself too. Yeah. And towards the end of it, like you said, after she passed, I was like, wow, I went through the whole grieving process. I was definitely like, I knew it was coming, but I was still like distraught, obviously. Yeah. And then I remember they called me to tell her she'd passed, and they were like, well, what funeral home do you want to use? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Pick the first one on the list.
Right, like, at that point, it doesn't really matter.
I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, and it's stuff like that. It definitely put things in perspective. Like, hey, here's what I care about. Here's what I don't care about. Like, yes, I want it to be nice. And even when we were like planning her memorial, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to have, I have to plan it. Has to be in, it has to be in the next week, whatever. And I did have one of my mom's really close friends, who's not my aunt, but I call her my aunt. She lives in Texas. She was really a lifesaver in all of this. She offered like some of the best perspective, and I hadn't talked to her in years. And I think it's kind of like people come into your life exactly when you need them.
Yep.
And my Aunt Patty, who's not my aunt, she came into the hospital. She was, even though I had other people that like lived in town, she flew to Atlanta from Texas, stayed in the hospital, stayed there with me for like 2 days. And she was like, all right, I got to get back to work. She helped me put mom into a hospice, got her all settled, said her goodbyes. 2 days later, my mom died. And so it was kind of like, it was one of those things where she was like, wow, I'm so glad I got to experience that. She helped me through it. It was a lifesaver. So really people like coming into your lives like at the right time.
And I would say let them come into your lives.
Yes.
Let people help you.
Yes. And that's one thing. I was always very like, well, no, I don't want to ask for help. I don't want, no one wants to help my mom because she's burned bridges. I don't want to be that person that's like, hey, I need help. And I got to a point, it was when she was in the hospital, I was like, fuck it. Like I need help. I spent 7 days in the hospital, slept in the little lean back chair, didn't eat because I was afraid if I left the room, she was going to die.
Right.
And I think that like weighing on my shoulders, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I remember talking to my therapist about this. I was like, I could never be in the room when like we put like our family dog down, right. Like I'm a strong person. I'm really strong. I don't like that. No, that is someone else's. Yeah. That's when I clock out. Yeah. And as bad as it sounds, it's just like, when I was talking to my therapist about it, she was like, some people, they like, your mom knew that was something that you didn't want to do or you couldn't do, and she knew about that. She wasn't going to put you through that.
So were you not in the room then?
I remember leaving that night. It was like 9:00 at night. And it was just me and her. Everyone had left. And I remember saying to her, I was like, look, and she was kind of at the point where it was getting harder for her to communicate. She couldn't really communicate at this point. Yeah. And it was just me and her in the room. The nurses came in, they were like, fixing her bedding, and they like, touched her like arms and her legs, and they were like, hey, we just want to let you know. And I remember my therapist like set me up for this too. She's like, the nurses know like up until like the 12-hour mark when
really?
Someone's going to pass. And the nurse was like, I just want to let you know, she's what's called modeling right now, where her core is really warm, but her like extremities are cold. So the blood isn't circulating. And I was like, okay, like, do you have a time? They were like, we don't know, like maybe like 24, 48 hours. Yeah. I was like, okay. And I went up to her, and like, she couldn't communicate with me at this point. She could like see me and kind of nod her head, but I was like, listen, if you want to go, you can go. If you want to stay, you can stay. Whatever you want to do it. I left. I don't doubt that she died within 30 minutes of me leaving the room. I went home. I got in bed. I was writing her eulogy, literally what I was going to say. They called me probably an hour after I left, and they were like, hey, just want to let you know, like, we went to the room and she's passed. And
oh, my God.
Like, yeah, it's
I
wild.
I don't know how you hold it together, because I can't hold it together.
There are times where I think, and when I get in this, I'm like, I didn't
You're
cry.
on auto mode. Kinsey's on auto mode, and I'm over here like in tears. Like
even at her memorial, I got up there and I spoke, and everyone was like boohooing, and I'm just like, thank you so much for coming. Like we've got snacks and drinks like out in the lobby. I get on autopilot, and this I'm like, hey. But there's times when I break down. Yeah. And kind of after seeing that, like even like going back to asking for help, I remember being in the hospital and I was like, I need fucking help. Yeah. I posted on Facebook, and I'll be like, I'm never gonna be the person that like posts on Facebook. I don't want people to know that like I'm going through something, or like be the person that's like, oh, I had a really bad day, like, and I want attention. But I was like, hey, here's the situation. I need help. Yeah. Here's what I need. And I was like, I need recommendations for hospice. Like, I didn't know what the fuck to do.
Right.
I was like, I need someone to be here because I'm going to have to leave and go tour these hospices basically.
Right.
And I had an outpouring of people show up for me, call me, come. I was like, don't even call me. I'm not even going to answer. Show up.
Yeah.
And I had people, it was literally like from elementary school, people that I went to elementary school with, their parents showed up because we had a relationship with them years and years ago.
I mean, we should be using Facebook and social media for good stuff like this.
And that, I remember
ask for help. If you need it, ask for it.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me, I was like, okay, like I get it now. I'm okay asking for help. And that was kind of like hey, you need to be okay asking for help. But, kind of seeing all that happen and going through it, planning the memorial, and me feeling like this pressure of, I have to do it by this time. My fake aunt was like, you don't have to do anything, Kinsey. You can do it on your own time. You can do it with whatever feels right. Like, you don't feel the pressure to do, you know, this huge elaborate memorial or like have it in a certain time. Do it when you're ready. And I was like, you're right. And I got into this mindset of, my mom's free. Now I want to feel free.
Yeah.
And I was in a marriage at the time that was not for me.
Yeah.
It was not for us. And I filed for divorce like 2 weeks after.
After your mom died?
Yeah.
Wow. Like, you just were like, this isn't serving me.
Yes.
I don't want to do this. And you were young, right? This
yeah.
was, you were 26, 25 at the time?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was
2 years ago?
26. Yeah.
26.
Okay. Yeah. And I was like, this is not, after like seeing my mom go through all that, I'm like, I can't live my life.
Yeah.
You know, I need to thrive and I need to do what's best for me. And after being a caretaker for so long, I was like, it's time to take care of me.
Good for you.
I was ready to, you know, live my own life, figure out what I wanted instead of, you know, kind of living someone else's life or what, you know, what was expected of me or what other people wanted me to do, or kind of like, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, or like, you know, once you have this, you'll be happy. Once you have that, you'll be happy. Once you, you know, live in this zip code, you'll be happy. Or, you know, once you have these shoes, you'll be happy. And it's just not that. It's, I was so humbled by it all. And I was so, I guess I just felt really free. Yeah. And I was like, this is not what my life is about. Because, I mean, my mom had money issues and she felt like, you know, she needed this, she needed that. She was constantly trying to, I think, kind of act the part of something that she wasn't. And after seeing that, and I'm like, wow, like, she lived her life kind of like this. And what do you have to show for it?
Right.
Like,
right.
So
I'm just so impressed that you took that leap of filing for divorce and realized that it wasn't the right fit, and you didn't do anything wrong and he didn't do anything wrong, and it just didn't work out. And well, we're not going to go there, but
I know I don't want to make it sound like, oh my God, it was just like we just got married and got divorced, because like it was shitty.
Yeah,
it was a shitty relationship, but it's just kind of like it wasn't serving me and it wasn't right. It wasn't a right fit.
I've talked to several people about this, and granted, I have been talking to more people about their kids, and I don't have kids. I've been talking to more people about their, you know, marriages, and I've never been married. But what I have told people, it's like, even if you are 50 years old, let's say you live another 30 years, you really want to be with that person that makes you miserable for another 30 years? Yeah. So you're 25 years old at this point, and you realize, like, no, this isn't who I want to be with. This doesn't serve me. He doesn't make me happy. None of the stuff that he's offering me or the situations I've been put in, even though they look real good from the outside, because you did have it pretty good for a little while. And even I looking in was like, oh, it must be nice, you know? And I didn't know what was happening. Yeah. So even all of that, it's like, you have to really be honest with yourself. Yeah. And if you choose to live that way, that's on you. Yeah. You know? And you were like, no, I'm done. And I think maybe like your mother dying and the strength that you had to have for that gave you the strength to do this. Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely wasn't like an impulse decision. Like, I had retained an attorney before that. Like, it was definitely like in the works. Yeah. It just like the sugar hadn't been pulled. And then I was like, you know what? I mean, it was a mutual, like, it's not like any of it was surprise. Yeah. But going through that, I mean, I don't know anyone my age who's been divorced, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I was like, all right, I got a car. I can live out of my car. I can put my golden retriever in the back. Oh, I'm like, it'll be fine. Yeah. Like, worst case scenario. But like, I had people to support me, you know? Yeah. And like, you had already asked for help once. Yes. So now you could do it again. And so I knew that like everything was going to work out. I mean, it worked out. So we've talked a lot about your mom. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about your dad. Okay. And this is where, in the first part of the episode, I said you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So here we go. You found out recently? I would say in 20... I guess mom died in 17. I guess it would have been in 2016. Okay, so 3 years ago, that your father is transgender. So let's define what transgender really means. Tell us in your own words. I would say it's someone who was born a certain gender and they feel
like they were meant to be another gender.
Okay. Does that mean he has transitioned? Like, do you actually go through that process? So he's chosen to be a female or live that way anyways. Yes. Okay. Yes.
And
how did he tell you?
He basically sat my brother and I down for dinner one night. Like, we went to dinner. He's like, let's go to dinner.
Is he dressed as a man? Like, I don't...
So at that time, yes, he was.
So he's still dressing as a man in front of you.
Yes.
Okay.
And like, we had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
No idea. Like, no even like little hint of an idea. And I'm someone who can like find things out. I'm a Scorpio. Like, I know what's going on. I can be like, all right, let me read between lines here. Had no idea. He sat me and my brother down and basically said he handed us a note. He was like, there's going to be some changes happening. I have to tell you guys something. And I like reached over and I like squeezed my brother's leg. I was like, what the fuck is he about to say? Like, what could he possibly, is he going to die? Like, I don't know. And he gave us this little note because I feel like he couldn't put it into words and tell us. Yeah. And it said, I have made a decision that I felt like it was always something that I wanted and something that I needed to do is basically live my life as a transgender woman. And I remember reading that being like, what the fuck? But my first thought was, and I remember my brother spoke first and he was like, Dad, we love you no matter what. And I was like, and my brother and I are like real close. Yeah. So, and we both have the same like thoughts and kind of opinions on things as far as like, we're both the type of people who are like, if you want to do what you want to do what you want to do. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna hate you because of it, you know? And so it was definitely reassuring to like have my brother there for that support.
Absolutely.
And be like, because I was like, fuck, like I'm taking care of my mom. Like, how am I gonna deal with this? Like, and then my marriage, I'm like, this is too much. Can we put this on hold for now?
Can you stay a man just for one more year?
Like, wait, just wait. And I had all these like thoughts going through my head, and I was like, I kept thinking like, surely he won't go through with this. Like, there's no way. Like, I feel like I'm already losing my mom. Like, how can I feel like I'm losing my dad now. And like, as time went on, I started thinking about it and I had a lot of questions. I was in therapy for my divorce. We were in couples therapy and I ended up having to go by myself all the time because I was like, what the fuck? Like, how do I deal with this? And it's so funny. The therapist that I picked for our couples therapy happened to be out of, I don't know how. I remember telling my mom about it. Was talking about my therapist. I was like, yeah, this name's Susan. And my mom was like, wait, what was her name? I told her last name. She was like, Kinsey, that was your dad and I's divorce therapist.
Really?
When it was a court-ordered back in Forsyth County.
I was going to say, so this lady's older? Yes. Clearly older?
I was like, I wanted someone who's been doing this for 30 plus years. It was the same therapist.
Oh my gosh.
That worked with them when they went through their divorce.
That is bizarre.
So it's really wild. And of course I told her that and she couldn't comment on it because confidentiality. Yeah. But I was just like,
little do you know.
So she knew my whole history.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. But anyway.
So what was so you said that your brother's reaction to the note was, we love you.
Yeah.
What was yours?
And I was like, I felt the same way. My first thought was, I cannot believe my dad has held this in for so long. And now finally at 56 has had the courage to come out and tell us. That was my first thought. But then, after the dinner, I was like, Sam, stick around. We need to chat. And I was like, I don't, my world has been turned upside down.
Yeah.
What in the world? And I was really angry for a while. I was really angry because I was like, fuck you. Like, this is someone who I thought I knew for 25 years of my life.
Yep.
And now that's gone.
You pull the rug from under me.
Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? And I had to question my own being. I had to question did you even want children? Did you why did you get married? Why did you have children? Did you even want us? And I remember my therapist was like, well, you need to go have a conversation with him, write down the questions that you want to know and ask him those questions. And kind of not force him, but ask questions.
Yeah.
Don't just be in the dark about it. Have the conversation. I'm the type of person where I'm like, let's have
try to understand him, right? Try to understand what he went through.
And he made a comparison. He said, which and in his mind, this is what made sense to him. Like, he's still trying to make sense of it too. He went through his own struggles his whole life.
Yeah.
Like, he said, it's kind of as if, you wanted to, your whole life, you wanted to take a trip to Europe and you haven't had the opportunity to take a trip to Europe. You had, your work obligations, you had family obligations, you really wanted to take this trip, but things kept getting, things were in the way. It wasn't the right time, blah, blah, blah. Well, now things are in a position where he's like, this is the right time. This is now where I feel comfortable coming out, basically. And he said, I did everything I could to fight it. He said, I felt like this since I was probably 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
6 or 7 years old.
For 50 years, he felt that way. And he finally took the step. So no matter what you're dealing with or what you're feeling, like, it is never too late to live your truth.
And he, when in explaining it to me, he said, my whole life I tried to fight it. He said he grew up in an Italian Catholic, Northeast family. Like, hell no.
Yeah.
He did everything.
That's not going to fly.
Yeah, he did everything he could to fight it. And he played football in college. He joined the Marines. And it makes me so sad that this is what he struggled with, and I had no idea. And now he's finally opened up about it, because I can see now how that affected him just in the 25 years that I knew him.
Right.
And kind of how he handled situations. My mom said, he was kind of had like social issues, or like wasn't great socially.
Yeah.
And obviously they got divorced for a reason. I don't know the details of that. But he said he literally joined the Marines in the hopes that he would go into combat and die, because he didn't have the courage to kill himself.
Wow.
Yeah. And like hearing my dad say that, and I'm like, wow. And you obviously didn't die in the Marines. You lived and you ended up having a family, and now here you are, and you get to like live your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I just want to be friends with him.
It's a good time. I mean, it's still fun, and it's still,
But again, let's hope he lives until he's 85, 90 years old. That's another 30 years of life he can actually live the way he wants to live.
And this all happened, my dad told us this before my mom passed. So I actually did tell my mom about this. And my mom's first reaction was, she started crying and she said, I feel so bad for him that he has had to hold this in his entire life. And like, that's my mom's grace coming through.
Right.
Like, and then of course she got pissed like later, like we all do, like, but your first reaction is, I feel so bad for him that he, and not like in a bad way, like not in a negative way, oh, I feel bad for you, but like that he's been holding this in, and he's been having to live with this his whole life and hasn't been able to tell anyone, or hasn't told anyone,
and how
or hasn't.
Exhausting that must be.
Yes. And but it definitely kind of like, all right, now I understand, like everyone has their own shit going on. Like my dad had shit going on, and like even when he was, when I was living with him in high school, and we would like get in fights, or we would, our relationship was bad. Like you never know like what he was dealing with that day, even though I'm sure I wasn't the best teenager.
This is same. Oh gosh, I have stories. But I think this, and after, it's been a few weeks now that I've had these episodes out, and people are literally coming up to me. Like I was at a studio the other day, and literally coming up to me talking about the episode we just released the day before. And they want to talk to me about it now. And I'm like, this is amazing, because the more we talk about it and learning that everyone is going through something or has gone through something, it allows us to be a little bit less judgmental and a little bit more compassionate.
Yeah.
And I think if we can start there in understanding other people, again, I always say, even Sheldon said it on the first one, like, we're not fixing, we're understanding. So if you can understand like what he had gone through, and like, oh, now it explains everything.
Yes.
And now it's like, oh, I kind of feel bad for being judgmental or whatever, but it's okay because you're making the steps right now to change the way you perceive it in the future.
Right.
And I think that's huge. And for you, it's teaching you with whoever comes into your life, whether they're in it for a day or the rest of your life, to take that grace from your mom, that compassion from your dad, and really pass that along to everyone that you surround yourself with. And I see that in you all the time. You're a little bit of a hard ass. But at the root of Kinsey,
you taught me.
I know.
Hashtag Megan taught me.
I remember at the men's event, you're like, I just want to be you when I grow up. I'm like, oh boy.
I was watching her. I was like, look at Megan, look at her go. And you're like telling fucking 22 men what to do. Oh, it was great. It was great.
Listen, I miss it. I'm coming back. I'm coming back somehow, some way, some studio. But I think at the heart of it is we're very similar. You sit down with us, you get to know us a little bit, and there's so much more than what you see on the outside. And the whole hard shell exterior front is really just a front.
Yeah.
So I think the way, there's so many paths you could have chosen with these 3 huge things happening in the first 28 years of your life. You could be sitting here miserable. You could be hating the world. You could be, literally a thorn in everyone's side, but you have chosen the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And you recently told your boyfriend about your father. And I remember you telling me, because I asked you if you're ready to tell your story yet. And he was the number one person that needed to know first before we put it out in the world. Yeah. And I told you, I'm like, Kinsey, he is the type of guy that will love you no matter what. I guarantee it. And if he's not then he's not the one for you. Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. If there's people in your life and they don't understand what you're going through, or at least try to understand, then you don't want them in your fucking life anyways. It's too short.
Yeah, it definitely is way too short. Like, I don't want to waste my time trying to please someone or trying to be like, oh, let me hide this part about me, or, not let people know, that I've got this going on, or this has happened in my past. Like, who cares what happened in your past? Like, it's what you're doing now, like learning from it now. And it's definitely taught me a lot about my friendships, my relationships, and just, who I pick to be in my life.
Absolutely.
Which is, it's a big deal. And I don't know. I mean, you never know. Like, so, some people may say, yeah, I'm okay with it. Or, it's hard to tell like what's going on in other people's heads, because you have to like let them process it.
Right.
Like, hey, not only am I divorced, but also I have a dead mom, and
right.
Also, my dad is not anymore.
You want to come along for this ride?
Like, buckle up.
Yeah. No,
so it's different, but it's also, and like one thing my boyfriend said to me is, he's like, someone else's actions and what someone else is doing or has done, like that doesn't affect me.
Exactly.
Like, that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's not like it's affecting me, and it's like the whole.
So learning to take control of the stuff that we can, and let go of all the other crap.
Yeah.
And I started that whole like hashtag like monthly thing, like take control and change. It's like, just change the things you can and stop obsessing about the stuff you can't control, because it's not going to change anything.
Right.
So I really want to ask, like, what's your dad doing now? Like, is he living as a woman?
Yeah,
He really?
He is. And I'm not good at the pronoun thing, and I feel bad. I'm like, I think about it, I'm like, oh fuck, but it's also kind of like, most people don't know. Most people aren't aware. Like, it's hard to change, like, hey, I've been calling you dad my whole life, and now, like, it's not dad anymore. There was a period of time where he was flip-flopping back and forth. Sometimes I didn't know who I was going to get. I didn't know if I was going to get dad. I didn't know if I was going to get Annie. So
Annie, that's his name?
Annie, yeah.
I love it.
I know. Like, she has already changed all of her, like, legal documents, driver's license, passport, and I think, that once kind of getting over that hump is like all right, I feel free now. Yeah. Like, just like, my mom's free, now my dad's free. Yeah. And I think it's, I definitely admire my dad a lot for doing this. I mean, he came out to his entire Marine Corps group that he still hangs out with. They have a reunion every year. He came out to them. He came out to his Italian Catholic family, went to family reunions. And my dad is very lucky that he's gotten mostly positive. Yeah. He's mostly positive response. I mean, think about that situation. Can you imagine coming out, whether you're gay, whether you're bi, whether you're transgender, and you don't get acceptance.
Right.
That's a huge thing too. So my dad has been very lucky with that, but it's still a struggle. And I know it's still going to be a struggle. My biggest thing is, all right, we've gotten over all these humps, but there's still speed bumps ahead. What's going to happen when I have kids?
Right.
How do we do this? And it's kind of like, well, I've already like gone through this. Like, now I'm kind of like, throw something else at me. Like,
what else
throw something else at me, and like, we'll deal with it. I have a lot more patience for situations, and now My boyfriend would probably tell you different, but I feel like I have like I let a lot of things roll now where I'm like, normally I would get mad. And there was a time where I was getting really angry at a lot of things. I had a lot of anger. I was mad about my mom. I was mad about my dad. I was mad about my divorce. And I kind of just like got to a point where it was like, you know what, things are not that bad. You know, I really took the time to focus on myself, and I spent a year, almost 2 years now, living by myself, kind of like finding myself again, finding out who I am and what brings me joy and what, you know, experiences, like even like the way I dress, like people are like, wow, like you dress so different. Like I got a tattoo on my arm now. Like what the fuck? Like I had my quarter life crisis, and, you know, I'm like, okay, I feel like I can breathe now. I feel free. I've spent this time caring for other people, like, you know, and dealing with other people. Well, I also have to draw a line somewhere and say, well, I need to take care of myself.
Well, and I think you had to kind of redefine your identity, because for a long time you were the one taking care of your mom and taking care of your family, and it's like she's gone, and yes, you're grateful that she's in a better place and she's not suffering, but it's almost like you lost the identity of caretaker.
Yes.
So finding this new identity in fitness, which is also very much a caretaker's field.
Okay, God, you're so damn good at this. You're so good at this.
I'm telling you, girl, this is what I want to do. This is
even
it.
Just talking to you and the things you said, I'm like, oh God, I'm glad that you're coming up with that and not me. You know? Like,
this is the way my brain thinks all the time. Now I'm just putting it out in the world.
I love it.
But you know, we are who we are because of how we grew up. I'm a believer of that, and you can definitely change a lot of aspects of that. But at the root of it, you thrive on helping people in a positive way with kick-ass music, like we've already discussed. But it's like, for me, I've always looked at teaching fitness as an hour in a studio or a dark spin room or whatever it is, where we can all escape together. And all of the shit that you worried about will be there when you leave this door. And this is an hour for you to just zone out, check out, and be in the moment. And it's why I was such a hard ass. I'm like, don't bring your phones in here. You don't need your phone. You got your watch. It's fine. But like, leave your phones outside. Like, connect with all the people in the room. And I remember, and if I had to go back and take classes, I'd be going to your class for sure, because you create that sort of environment and that sort of culture in just those 50 minutes that you're teaching.
Yeah. And I think that like, it happened without me even thinking. And a lot of the way things kind of unfold, it's done in a way that I don't think about. Like, it just kind of falls into my lap. And that's how things have kind of worked out for me. Instead of me being like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, don't just think about it. Just have faith and have like the understanding that you're going to be okay. Everything's going to happen how it's supposed to happen. You know, you're teaching 18 classes a week right now because this is what you need to do. But
Been there, done that.
Yeah, we'll see. And just kind of like being the person that can, you know, help people with whatever they're getting through in that moment, in that 50 minutes, without even having to think about it or try too hard. Like, you know, I've had clients tell me like they go to leave the room, and I had someone say to me last week, they're like, do they coach you on like what to say, like in that last little part, that like motivation? I was like, no, like that's all us. Like, you know, we're here to make your day better. And she goes, because y'all have me leaving here on cloud 9. And I was like, that's amazing. That's why I do this.
That's why we do it.
That's exactly why I do it. Yeah. Like, if I can make a difference in one person's life, I mean, even just like the few things that I either talk about or post about, and someone says, hey, I mean, I have strangers reach out to me and say, hey, I went through this, and they just, you know, kind of blurted out, like, here's what I'm going through. And I'm that person, because I didn't have that.
Right.
But now I'm that person to talk to them like, hey, you lost a parent. I always say, you know, I had a friend say to me after my mom died, because she had lost her father too. She said, losing a parent is something no one understands until they do understand.
Yeah.
And you can have people, you know, like you, who offer your support, but it's like having that person who's been through what you've been through, or is going through what you've been through. And like, I don't know anyone who's transgender. I don't know anyone who has a transgender parent. Like, right. But until I open up about it and actually talk about it and say, hey, like, I would love to be able to like talk about it and kind of like see, you know, what someone else is feeling. Maybe I can help someone who, relate to someone who's going through divorce. Like, I didn't know what to do.
Right.
But I got through it. And maybe there's someone who's not as strong as me who I'm that person for them. And I think in this community and what you're doing, bringing people together, like even in Atlanta, I know it's going to grow, but in Atlanta, like we all know each other. Like for the most part, a lot of us know each other. And you're like, wait a minute, like this is someone I know and this is what they've been through. Yeah. And now you create that connection where it's like, holy shit, I had no idea.
And that is my goal with this is to, I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, for 20 years, I've been teaching people how to use their bodies. I started at 17 teaching swim lessons. And I worked with kids for 14 years and then adults. And now I want to teach people how to actually use their brains and their thoughts and their minds to take control of their life. And it goes beyond physical fitness. Mm-hmm. So for you, I think this is just the beginning for you. And I'm excited to see what happens.
It'll be good.
For both of us.
Right?
Yeah.
Fist bump.
Fist bump. Live show's coming soon.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
Anything else you want to add for anyone listening out here?
I think just like, as much positive as we talk, I'm not perfect. Yeah. I have my downfalls. I definitely I slip up. I have times when I'm angry and that's okay. Sometimes I'll just start crying. Like you said, like I get an autopilot and I'm like, I just have to be the strong one. And there are times when I'm like, I just miss my mom. Yeah. I mean, I broke down in front of my boyfriend. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I just have those moments, and it's fine to have them. It's fine to not have them. Everyone deals with things differently. I'm by no means am I perfect and I don't know it all, but I know a little bit. And if I can use that little bit to at least be there for someone, be the person or be the friend that I didn't necessarily have, that I can bring someone up, then I think that's why I went through what I went through.
And just talking about it on this platform makes it okay to talk about.
Yes.
And encouraging people no matter what they're going through.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what you're going through. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I know it's cliche, like you're not alone, but you're really not. You're not. And there's other people that are going through what you went through. There's other people who might go through what you went through. And, just know that it'll get better. It'll all work out in the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just gotta have a little faith.
A little faith.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Telling your story, and I'm excited to see what happens in your future and my future, and I love you.
I love you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of 6 Feet Above. I'm your host, Megan Armstrong. Subscribe so you never miss another episode, and follow me on Instagram at 6 Feet Above Podcast to keep the conversation going. Tune in next week for a brand new episode. This episode is a product of Audiographies, produced by Denora Sepolia, edited by Jacob Smolian, and the music was by Keenan Willis, funded by yours truly. I'll see you next time.